So today's topic that we're going to be diving deep into is biohacking in all its different flavors. So we got 700 people signed up, and we got 100 different questions that we're going to go through. There's going to be topics about goals for biohacking, about biohacking your home. A lot of people are interested in exercise and exercise regimens, different diets, especially ketogenic diets and intermittent fasting and carbs versus fats and all that stuff is on the menu, as well as some special questions like the ladies out there. What's about biohacking and females? Are diets good? Is calorie restriction a good idea? Is low carb a good idea for women? So these kind of topics we're going to be diving deep into. Also some things for vegetarians out there and sleep hacks and all that. Let's see how far we can go today. And if you're watching this on the live stream page, on the top you can see a few promotions that are live for the next 24 hours. So Ben Greenfield is also speaking at the Biohacker Summit in Helsinki on 13th to 14th of October this year. So if you want to see him live and many other biohackers that are coming along, I might tell you a little bit more about the event later today. There's a discount available. So there's an early bird ticket discount already. And Ben is offering also 10% discount on top of that with the code Ben. And there's the Biohacker's Handbook that you can subscribe to. It's a pretty massive book that we've been writing together with our colleagues, Dr. Olli Sovijärvi and Jaakko Halmetta. This is the Finnish book. It's a best-selling book right now in Finland, top 10 knowledge books, and it's coming out in English later this year, in December earliest. But without further ado, I'm gonna bring on Ben, and he's on his treadmill as we speak. So welcome on the show, Ben. Oh, yeah. Let's see. Just make sure that you're coming through. Yeah, can you, Ben, say if, okay, here we go. All right. Now Ben is live.
All right, I'm live. It's good to know I'm alive.
Yes, you are. Yes,
I can never tell. All right, cool.
How has it been, Ben, for you since last Biohacker Summit? We haven't been talking too much recently.
Everything's been great, man. I just got back from Denver, Colorado, where I was covered in snow, and I shot about 45 videos down there on all sorts of things related to enhancing your mind and your body and your spirit. So yeah, I had a busy weekend, and I got back late last night. Spent some time out in the sunshine this morning. My workout was self body care. So I did about 30 minutes of foam rolling and using a little ball on just about every sore spot that existed on my body out in the sunshine on a yoga mat on my back porch overlooking the forest. And then I hopped into the sauna for about 20 minutes and did a little cold plunge, and yeah, here I am.
That's pretty cool. I also had sauna yesterday evening. I came from Amsterdam, where I like to spend a weekend usually this time of the year, because today is 1st of May, it's the Labor Day, and a lot of people are out drinking here in Finland, and it's not to be honest with you, it's not really that warm yet here. So what I do, I take the airplane, I go to Amsterdam, and they have the King's Day over there, and it's kind of like the Finnish 1st of May on steroids. There's people on the street selling their old stuff. There is basically a flea market. The whole city is a flea market, and there is all kinds of restaurants that people have opened up on the streets, and there's parties on different streets, different music. People are on boats driving around, and the nature is beautiful. I went to a park, and I'm already looking forward to foraging. Here in Finland, there is already some plants out there, so I'm going to dive deep into that as quickly as that happens here as well.
Yeah, everything is in bloom here. My kids and we're going to go out and do a little bit of foraging tonight when they get back from school, because it's the time of year when all sorts of new things are popping up and blooming. So it's exciting times, man. I love it.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into the questions. I try at my best to pick up as many questions as people submitted. So I will start with a few general questions about biohacking. So Minaro is asking, what is the most deepest drive, Ben, that makes you all the time go forward?
Oh, well, there's a few things. First of all, I'm a big believer. And there's actually a guy over here in the States named Don Wildman. He founded Bally's Fitness, and he's a very, very fit old man. He does like hella skiing and gets dropped by a helicopter up on top of slopes, and he goes like big wave surfing with Laird Hamilton in Malibu and Kauai. And one of his tips, one of the tricks that he has that allow him to stay so young, in addition to just like hanging out with young people and having a workout regimen and a daily routine that he does every day for his own fitness, is he's a real big believer in doing epic things. In other words, doing things that are kind of like scary and take you outside of your comfort zone. And so I have this rule for myself that about every quarter, I try and do something that scares the hell out of me. Okay, so in some cases it might be a Spartan race that is longer than I'm used to and has a lot of unknowns. In some cases, it might be trying to spend the day with my right foot forward instead of my left foot forward when I'm snowboarding. Another recent one that I just signed up for that scares the hell out of me is next month I'm going to try and do an open mic night on my ukulele. And so these are the kind of things that not only keep me young, but that also give me drive, right? So rather than sitting around all day replying to emails and being hunched over my computer, if I know that 4 weeks from now I have to be towing the line of some kind of a race, or perhaps need to be working on my musical skills to play the ukulele somewhere, or need to make sure that I maintain my balance for snowboarding in a different position. It really does give me a lot of drive to focus on improving my body and brain each day. And not only that, but it also ensures that if I have articles to write or videos to shoot or emails to plow through, I tend to stay really focused, because I know there's just like so many other fun things I want to go out and accomplish and do. But like one thing that I think has really helped me is just like always trying to do epic things, like always having something on the schedule that I can look at on the calendar that just like gives me drive when I wake up each day, because I know there's something I'm shooting for. And generally for me, I find having something about no more than 2 or 3 months out, right? Not like years out, and not like something once a year, and not so frequently that I'm stressed by having to do something, enormously stressful every week, but about every 2 to 3 months or so. I just try to have something on the schedule that gives me that drive and keeps me reminded that I just need to keep myself optimized and continue to engage in like really good time management and productivity each day.
I see. There's a few questions coming along. So from Lithuania, there's a question, how to motivate yourself to live healthy in everyday life? I mean, what do you do, Ben, to keep up with this? Don't you sometimes feel like taking a vacation from being a superhuman?
A big part of it is what I just mentioned. I'm a big believer in extrinsic motivation. I sometimes find it difficult to focus on being healthy, exercising, eating healthy, and taking care of myself just for the sake of longevity or just for the sake of health. Because frankly, low triglyceride levels and high HDL levels, or, optimized thyroid, or, low body fat or something like that, that's nice to think about, but it's not quite as motivating for me as going after a goal that I have written down or something I've signed up for. Another example would be I just signed up for like a 3D archery shoot this summer, And so all of a sudden, when I go out and shoot my bow, I'm shooting for a bigger reason than just like working on my hand-eye coordination or improving my vision or something like that. It's like I know I have this thing that I signed up for, that I have to get ready for. And so I'm not trying to sound like a broken record in my reply to these first two questions, but I really do feel that always like signing up for events, because it's so easy to find things to sign up for that keep you motivated. Like that's really my key is I always have something on the schedule that just like keeps me driving forward, and that keeps me motivated and gets me out of bed every morning.
I see. So basically what you're doing, you're scheduling already these massive exercise events and different events where you want to be in the best shape as you can, and or putting yourself on stage doing ukulele live for other people, so you want to perform at your best. So
right, or even just something like coming down like to your event in Finland to speak, right? So if I know I'm going to be speaking, let's say on, let's say I was going to speak on say like light there. Well, then that actually keeps me motivated for the months leading into my talk at your event to really like stay, like to keep reading about like artificial light and blue light and infrared and near infrared. And again, like it's nice to just read for my own self-education or to study for my own self-education. But for me, knowing I have to get up on stage and talk about something, or if I give myself a deadline to write an article for a magazine or a website or something like that, it gives me a lot more motivation to study up on that topic and to stay immersed in that topic versus just like doing it because I'm interested in it. So once again, it's like, it's those events and those deadlines and extrinsic motivation from knowing other people depend on you, or other people are going to be watching you, or you're going to be competing against other people, in events, things like that really keep me motivated and keep me productive.
Yeah. You just made me actually remind me that I'm in front of artificial LED lights here. It's evening, 10:30 in Helsinki, Finland. I'm gonna just put on my blue light blocking glasses as we speak, just to help my sleep later tonight. So there's Christopher Argueta asking about sleep aids. Tell us everything you know about it, or let's not go that deep. Tell us a few. Tell us a few things that people should do in addition to, let's say, limiting the influence of blue wavelengths in the evening. What should you do?
Yeah. Obviously, there we could go for hours, but I'll tell you the top 3 things I've been doing lately to harp on what you were just talking about, like artificial lighting or LEDs in your office. What I do now in my office at night is, of course, I'll wear the blue light blocking glasses when I go in at night to my office to work on the computer. But then I just have one little light that lights my desk up quite nicely, but that doesn't seem to produce much wakefulness at night. And I believe it's about 400 nanometer or so. It's like a little infrared light, but it's called a Ruby Lux. So it's just like a red light that I have plugged in my office. And then upstairs in my bedroom, I use these things called biological LED bulbs, and they're made by a company called Lighting Science. They're called sleepy time bulbs. And so I don't have any blue light up in my bedroom, nor do I really have any blue light down in my office now. It's just all red light. And so the office has the Ruby Lux lamp. It's just like a clip-on lamp that attaches to my desk. And then I have a Ruby Lux bulb plugged into that. And then up in the bedroom, it's the lighting science bulbs. In addition to that, a couple other things that have been really helping me out lately with sleep. I'll give you one that's more like technology, and one that's probably what we might consider to be more natural, I suppose, but that I've measured via heart rate variability and found to be pretty effective. The first is I've been using this device on my collarbone. It's called a Delta Sleeper, and it emits a hertz frequency of about 7.4 hertz or so, pretty close to the same hertz frequently that like the planet Earth might emit if you were laying on it, grounding or earthing. But because it's so close to what's called the brachial plexus, which is near to your collarbone, there's actually a nerve bundle in the brachial plexus that will pick up that signal emitted by the device, very low frequency, very natural frequency, not like having your cell phone on at night or something like that. And the signal travels up to your head, and it's about 20 minutes or so that signal emanates, and it actually lulls you into to delta wave sleep. And I've measured my sleep with that, and you actually see a pretty significant increase in deep sleep with that device attached to the collarbone. And it just comes with a little like adhesive on the back of it. It's literally like a quarter of the size of a cell phone, and you just put it on and you sleep during the night. And that's actually, it helps out a lot, especially when I'm traveling. I can use it for napping sometimes, but I really like that one just because it's small and portable and easy to use. It's not really super inexpensive. I think it's about $400 or so US dollars. But I really like that as a portable sleep aid that you can use at home or when you're traveling. And then another thing that's free is there's a lot of interesting research done on the link between breath work and heart rate rhythms, and specifically the fact that certain forms of breathing can increase your heart rate variability, which is just a slight amount of variability in between each beat of your heart, which can indicate really good health and a good robustness of your nervous system, but they can also help with relaxation. And you tend to see a heart rate variability that encourages a really nice beta to theta brainwave ratio, which more or less is just like a decrease in the amount of stress that you feel. And the specific form of breath work that can help with this is a breath frequency that gives you not much more than come out to, it's going to be, no more than about 12 breaths per minute, and preferably a lot fewer than that. And so what I'll do now for about 10 minutes when I lay in bed at night is I'll do a 5 to 6 count in and a 5 to 6 count out for approximately 10 minutes. That's it. Very, very simple. 5 to 6 count in and a 5 to 6 count out for about 10 minutes. And when I've worn a heart rate monitor while doing that and actually measured my heart rate variability, it's a really significant increase in heart rate variability. And you also see a pretty significant improvement in terms of a decrease in the amount of time that it takes you to fall asleep just by using something as simple as a breathwork pattern. I mean, we're so used to, in this day and age, popping a sleep drug or taking some Valium or Ambien or, even overloading with something like, CBD or melatonin or something like that to help with sleep. But sometimes it's as simple as just taking those 10 minutes before you go to bed at night and practicing a very slow breathwork pattern. And it's pretty significant what it can do to brainwave patterns and to sleep latency. So, it can be as simple as that. But yeah, those are three that I'll use. Is a lot of these red light bulbs instead of blue light bulbs. The use of something like this Delta Sleeper for the delta frequency, and then just basic slow breathing patterns for about 10 minutes prior to falling asleep.
I see. I want to actually throw in one company that I came along recently. It's called Light Cognitive, and Light Cognitive is producing these beautiful like full ceiling or full wall kind of windows that you can put into your basement or anywhere, and it basically turns the room into something where you feel like you're outside. So they produce a very massive spectrum of light that is very similar to daylight, and they have an app also for this wall, so you can program it in such a way that it mimics nature outside. So it's kind of sunrise, and you see the horizon from the window, which is pretty cool. It's just a light element. And
interesting.
In the evening,
I know that these blue light boxes that people sell for like seasonal affective disorder, they can actually cause some damage to the retina because of the unnatural frequency of the blue light itself. Do you know if they've taken into account the brightness or the temperature on these screens, or are they as harsh as like a typical blue light box?
Yeah, so I went to their office and I experienced this firsthand, and it was very different from this. And one of the reasons is the area, the surface area that they produce. So it's often you have these very spotty lights. You have a very strong spot from which the light is coming, but this is even out basically, just like like natural sunlight would come in a very indirect way. So I didn't feel at all that the spectrum is unnatural. They are mimicking very closely what it is in nature, and it's not concentrated on a single spot, and that makes it very comfortable. And you really see when you're in a room like that how it feels. And I definitely look forward to getting them to exhibit their product at the Biohacker Summit. They might be coming to Stockholm and in Helsinki, so we are now in discussions with them to get their elements there so that people can experience them. They are sold out on a constant basis.
I have one. I'm going to take a picture of it here, and I'll show it to you here when I turn the camera around. See, this is what I use. It's basically this giant screen. It's called a window, and it's a forest outside. So that's also one way to do it, is just to have a window in your office.
Yeah, that's for
sure.
I
would have turned my computer around, but I didn't want to unplug the internet. I don't have Wi-Fi at my house. I just plug into the wall.
Absolutely,
it's a little bit more
the
healthy.
original real window, of course, is the best option.
Right.
But when you live
the window with nature,
when you live in such a part of the world as I do here in Finland, where it's like dark most of the year, something like this comes pretty handy. All right, let's go forward a little bit. I think there is a lot of people who would be interested more about your home, so I'm going to pick up from Kelly Bento the question about healthy home. So what specifically do you do in your home with your family to mitigate the dangers of modern living? For example, electromagnetic radiation, harmful products and ingredients involved, etc. So what do you do? A few points.
There's a lot that I do, and so let's just go into a few points. So I primarily focus on 4 variables, really: air, light, water, and electricity. So, for example, for air, NASA over here in the U.S. did the Clean Air Study, and they identified a variety of different house plants. I believe it was 7 of them that really help in terms of remediation of toxins from the environment, specifically from air, and the production of polyphenols and the production of gases that can really help with, creating more of like a natural environment inside your house. And so what my wife and I did was we went and looked at this study, and we purchased all the plants that tend to do okay out here in the Northwest United States where we live, and we just have those planted all over the house. So just about every room in our house has a plant in it for the air. And then in my central air unit, I have a HEPA air filter. I use one made by a company called Aller Air. They also do like standalone units that you could just like put on the floor, in a bedroom or in an office. There's another pretty good company called Rabbit that makes like an air purifier HEPA air filter. There's nothing that'll beat just like the nature's HEPA air filter, which is a plant. But we actually have both. We have both a HEPA air filter and then a variety of plants throughout the house. So there's a lot of other things that we do for air, but that's one thing we pay attention to in the home is natural air, clean air. The next is lighting, which I already kind of talked about, right? So in addition, lots of good natural windows. Any of the rooms where there is a lot of kind of like mental morning work to be done, we've got special biological LED bulbs called they're made by a company called Lighting Science. They're awake and alert bulbs is the name of those bulbs. And then, of course, like I mentioned, in areas where it's primarily nighttime or where we're just working at night, we use the red light bulbs, things like the Ruby Lux or the Lighting Science Sleepy Time bulbs. And we also often use just like natural candlelight at night, which is, very simple. And then in addition to air and in addition to light, in terms of water, that tends to be an issue, whether it's municipal water coming into your home from the local water supply or whether it's your own water. I have well water and it still has some issues, some bacterial iron issues, some manganese issues. And then I get concerned about, the potential for things like glyphosate runoff from local farms and things like that. So what I do is my water goes through, in my case, a hydrogen peroxide filter a manganese filter, and then what's called a structured water filter, where it passes through like a series of glass beads. Very, very structured water filters are very simple. They just basically, it's like a vortex that the water passes through that structures the water and causes it to vibrate a little bit, before you drink it. But for most people, actually, what I recommend, because most people don't have a well, what I recommend is reverse osmosis. So a reverse osmosis filter, either whether a countertop or an under the counter. And reverse osmosis is really good, but the problem with it is it will remove a lot of the minerals from the water. So you need to purchase a reverse osmosis filter that has what's called a remineralizer added to it, or you can just use that filter, and then after you've filtered your water, before you drink it, just add a few trace liquid mineral drops, or better yet, just like a pinch of sea salt. And if you want to achieve the structuring effect, you can just set it out in the sunlight or under an infrared light for a little while, and that'll help to structure it when it has the minerals added to it. And so those are some of the things we'll do for water. And then, for electricity, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one question from the audience. So Anthony Benedettini is asking, what kind of cookware do you use at home? So you can maybe add that also on the list as you go through.
Yeah, sure. For electricity, like I mentioned, we keep the Wi-Fi router off, and I've just got Ethernet cables in each room of the house, so it's very convenient. We use Macintoshes, so we have to purchase the FireWire to Ethernet adapter, which is pretty simple, and I travel with it too because most hotels actually have Ethernet ports in the hotel rooms, and as long as you travel with an Ethernet cable and an adapter, you can typically find the Wi-Fi router in the room. A lot of times it's behind the TV, and you just unplug it so you don't have a lot of Wi-Fi, and then you just plug into the wall. And that's what I do in my home. I just plug into the wall, and then we make sure that nothing that is Bluetooth enabled in the home, like a treadmill that might have a dashboard with Bluetooth on, or a computer with Bluetooth enabled. We just make sure Bluetooth is off on any device for which we're able to turn the Bluetooth off. That's just a very simple example of some of the things I'll do for electricity. There is, of course, plenty more, but in the interest of time, Anthony's question was about cookware. Primarily, we use just a cast iron cookware. Pretty simple, straightforward.
Are you not worried about like leaking iron? I mean, that's a pretty good source of iron supplementation if you are deficient of it.
Yeah, I'm not concerned. I've personally tested. I do pay attention to iron levels, and probably a pretty good resource on this is Dr. Joseph Mercola. He's a guy who has had thalassemia and had issues with iron, and so he's got some good writings on this. But basically, I test iron once every quarter to make sure that I'm not getting like hemochromatosis or excessive iron intake or buildup, and I'm always just fine. Part of that is probably also because I'm an athlete, so I have really high red blood cell turnover. I go through my iron stores a little bit more quickly. I'm racing in Spartan races, so I'm constantly bleeding from barbed wire wounds. So iron tends to get out of my body pretty quickly. But no, I mean, like it's never been an issue. But at the same time, frankly, I also don't eat a lot, right? So I might cook in cast iron once every 2 days, and I'm not somebody who's like eating, lots and lots of meals per day. At the most, I might eat 3 meals in a day, and one of those might be cooked in cast iron. So, yeah, so we use cast iron. We use a little bit of we use a crock pot. We use a food dehydrator, a blender. Just some basic glass mason jars. So, very, very simple kitchen, really.
Right. Let's actually jump into the diet aspect of this. This is what we got a lot of questions about. So. I guess when you say that you don't eat that a lot, I mean, you probably are intermittent fasting, aren't you? Or doing some kind of high fat based diet. Is that right?
Yeah, not that high fat. I used to do like strict ketogenesis where I'd eat like 80 to 90% fat. And, there's some cognitive benefits to that. And there's some definite benefits for aerobic endurance, but it gets a little boring. Like, I'm a big fan of, eating tubers and having some fruits and some like soaked and sprouted and fermented carbohydrate sources, like not just tubers, but a lot of the grains and the rices and even wines and fruits and sourdough bread. And
I'm having some kombucha here right now.
Yeah, nice, nice. And
which I
so,
made myself. Cool.
by the way,
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
shot, a shot of vodka and a squeeze of lemon and kombucha is a must in the evening.
I have to try that one.
Anyways, though, the diet for me, typically I eat a lot of plants, a lot of wild plants during the day, along with a lot of fats, like olive oils and avocado, coconut oil, seeds, nuts, some nut butters. Often some good cold water fish like sardine, mackerel, herring, anchovy. Occasionally like leftovers from the night before, which is typically like some kind of like a grass-fed meat or an organ meat. And then in the evenings, it's a little bit more liberal. Sometimes we'll go out to eat like to an Asian restaurant. Sometimes we'll cook at home, and usually it's some kind of a vegetable, typically roasted or boiled or steamed or cooked. Typically some kind of a meat. Usually like a meat that I've hunted, like a deer or a turkey. Occasionally we'll do, fish, like not like a small fish, like a mackerel or a sardine, but like a steelhead or a salmon or a trout. And then that's often with some kind of starch, right? Like quinoa or amaranth or millet or sourdough
Yeah,
bread or rice. And so, yeah, it's,
I
it's
see.
generally it's generally very plant rich, high fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate, but a little bit more liberal in terms of carbohydrate intake, especially at the end of the day. And the fact is that my children are very active towards the end of the day. We're always out hiking around and sometimes doing a workout, things like that. So our blood glucose levels don't really tend to get that spiked from an evening meal that's rich in carbohydrate, because after you've worked out or after you've exercised and been physically active, you're very insulin sensitive, and your glucose transporters are generally upregulated to the extent where you can shuttle glucose into muscle tissue pretty easily, even with low insulin levels. So really, it's not that big of an issue for us to be doing like carbohydrates in
Yeah.
the evening.
Yeah. So you are an expert on these things, and you've been experimenting on many different diets. So Petteri Lappalainen is asking, can you get the same performance out of a high-fat diet, ketosis, than you can get from a higher carb-based diet? And what would be kind of an optimal amount for carbs? And there is also another question about women. So how does this apply to women? It seems that some sources say that you should have a little bit more carbs if you're a woman. So what are the adverse health effects and the health benefits?
Yeah, so if you're looking for performance and you're using a strict ketogenic diet, the one thing that you need to be aware of is that if you're engaged in a sport that's very glycolytic, like crossfitting or sprinting or tennis or soccer or something like that, generally you will see a little bit of a deficit in power and strength production, especially if the glycolytic of the nature of the sport is longer than like 30 seconds, especially if some of the sprints and things that you're doing go past the point where you're just splitting creatine and really delve into the point where you're dipping into blood glucose or liver or muscle glycogen stores. For example, a soccer game where you're sprinting down the field and jogging back and sprinting again before you've recovered. There's all sorts of situations like that in sport. In those type of scenarios, I really am a fan of ensuring that your glycogen levels aren't empty, and because of that, it can be helpful to do more of like a cyclic ketogenic approach, very similar to what I do, where you're eating a high fat, moderated protein, preferably in most cases plant-rich diet until the very end of the day, and then you do a little bit of a carbohydrate refeed to top up the liver and the muscle glycogen levels, so they're kind of ready for like that harder glycolytic effort the next day. And then you can still keep yourself relatively efficient from a fat burning standpoint if you simply have like one day of the week where you're a little bit more strict. Or for example, for me, for any of the weekends where I'm home, I'll just fast from Saturday night until Sunday night, and even just a few fasts, during the month. Those add up pretty quickly in terms of not only like cellular autophagy and cellular cleanup, but also fat burning efficiency. And so, I'll fast, and maybe I'll have a little bit of bone broth, some electrolytes, some kombucha, things like that during the fast, but not much else. And that's a good way to kind of have that combination of a cyclic ketogenic diet, some of the benefits and fat burning efficiency mechanisms that happen when you fast, and you get kind of the best of both worlds if you're wanting to perform. And if you're a woman, you can use the same type of ratios, but for a woman, the main thing is not necessarily it's not really the carbohydrates that tend to be an issue in terms of like mild restriction of carbohydrates using the scenario that I just outlined, but frequent fasting in a woman and frequent long fasting in a woman appears to affect the levels of a hormone called kisspeptin. And what happens is when you have frequent fasting periods in a woman, it seems to lower kisspeptin levels. And what that does is it lowers levels of gonadotropin-releasing hormone. And that's a hormone that's responsible for eliciting your production of things like luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone. And some of these hormones are responsible for enhancing fertility. And so in this case, it turns out that what you shouldn't do if you're a woman is frequent, for example, exercise in a fasted state, especially like hard exercise in a fasted state in the morning, or for example, like, intermittent fasting and fasting for like 16 hours every day, where you have like an 8-hour compressed feeding window. I actually find a lot of women do better with, mild fasting, right? Like you finish dinner at, let's say, 8 p.m. and you just don't snack a lot until like 8 a.m. But then you actually have a good breakfast, 20 grams of protein, some plants, a lot of fats. And, I find for women that, especially when it comes to fertility, libido, menstrual cycles, things like that, actually eating breakfast and not skipping breakfast, not doing excessive fasting or excessive calorie restriction, and staying away from too many, of these like water fasts or extended fasts, things like that. Women just tend to do better with a little bit more frequent meal intake, it seems, or at least a little less fasting when it comes to maintaining fertility and libido and their proper cycles.
I want to throw in another question from Valerie. So, how do you balance your hormone levels if you mess up, this balance? And
yeah. So it appears that as little as 4 weeks of adequate feeding seem to reverse a lot of the thyroid and the hormonal deficits that have been seen in, for example, like female competitive athletes who are, or female competitive, what do you call them, figure competitors, right? Who get up on stage and they're in their bikinis or their swimsuits and their stilettos and go and pose because they get their body fat levels really low. Like they also tend to have some real issues with their thyroid, their estrogen, their progesterone, their DHEA, their hormones, et cetera. And that can have some serious long-term issues when it comes to things like, bone loss, for example, is a big one, as well as just over hormonal health and energy levels. And it appears that just like regular feeding and not restricting calories, meaning eating at least as many calories as you need for your basal metabolic rate, right? For your necessary calories needed for your daily activity. It appears that about 4 weeks of just like eating every day as many calories as your body needs, no calorie restriction, no fasting, seems to be able to kind of reverse a lot of these issues. So, more or less, it's a matter of like eating more calories and exercising a little bit less to reverse some of that hormonal damage.
I see. I actually want to throw in a question from the chat. So Malik is asking about how to gain weight. Also, I have from Carl Oulu the same question on the list of questions. So how do you gain weight in a healthy way without like extreme, feeding or training or whatever? So kind of
right.
What would be a good way to start if you are a bit skinny like I am?
Right, exactly. A little bit more frequent eating, frequent grazing, frequent snacking can help out quite a bit. People who are very skinny, who have higher metabolisms, you tend to have a little bit less of a blood sugar response to foods anyways. And, I've worked with some high school athletes and some skinny people, and, I'll often put someone on a 5,000 to 6,000 calorie a day diet, spread out throughout the day, because you can get bloating and gas and indigestion if you try and squeeze that many calories into just 2 or 3 meals during the day. So typically we'll shoot for closer to 5 to 6 meals during the day, like a big breakfast, a snack of, like nuts in between breakfast and lunch, a big lunch, a snack of like a yogurt or coconut pudding or chia seeds or something like that in the afternoon, and then a big dinner. And so it's a matter of really, keeping yourself relatively anabolic with frequent feed. You do need to take into account the fact that excessive protein can have some pretty significant issues when it comes to constant activation of mTOR, and some potential issues also with elevated insulin and insulin-like growth factor, which may not be all that great for longevity. And so because of that, rather than using like a high protein approach when it comes to those, those 5 meals that you're eating during the day and the excess calories you're eating during the day, I do recommend you go more for fats, right? So you do a lot of avocados and avocado oil, olives, olive oil, coconut manna, coconut oil, coconut milk, wild caught fish, not necessarily extremely high amounts of just pure protein like, the traditional chicken breast and broccoli approach. And then also you're probably going to find that because of that, you need to take into account the fact that you'll need a little bit more lipase, some more digestive enzymes, ox bile extract, bitters, lemon, fennel, a lot of these digestifs that will help you to digest this fat a little bit more, because you are going to be eating more calories and more healthy fats as you're doing that. And then basically you combine that with ensuring that all these extra calories, rather than getting partitioned into adipose tissue, are actually getting utilized to build new muscle. And for that, it comes down to lifting heavy stuff. I mean, it's pretty simple. Basically, you get on a protocol where, for example, you're doing a full body heavy weightlifting session about 3 times a week.
Would something like kettlebell be kind of the way to go if you want to do like the minimum kind of dose for maximum results to trigger the hormonal, the metabolic triggers that you need to kind of shovel the carbs into muscle building?
Kettlebells are better for metabolic conditioning, but they're not so good for muscle building. Like, they're really good for like mitochondrial density and for cardiovascular performance and for functional training and for explosiveness. But for hypertrophy, I'm actually a bigger fan of using barbells and dumbbells and weight training machines that you move in a relatively tempo-based, smooth, controlled manner for a range of anywhere from 8 to 15 reps at a weight that leaves you relatively exhausted by the end of the set. And basically, doing like a full body workout like that about 3 times a week. If your pure goals are like size and hypertrophy, and not necessarily like fitness or power or strength or cardiovascular capacity, but you just want to put on size, that's generally the way to go. And it's generally also a matter of just like repeating the same exercises and hitting the muscles at the same angles over and over again. You look at a program like Mass Made Simple by Dan John. The nutrition advice in that book I don't like too much, but the lifting advice, is just basically like you're beating up the same muscles over and over again 3 times a week. You're not doing a lot of cardio because it's going to burn a lot of calories and keep you from maintaining size, and you're just like lifting heavy stuff a few times a week, allowing for adequate recovery in between each of those sessions, eating a lot of calories, and that's really how you that's how you pack on size pretty quickly.
Gotcha. So I'm going to throw in a little reminder here, because there's also people watching this live on Facebook and YouTube, and they're not on the live streaming page. So if you want to get to any of the offers that are related to this webinar, so biohack.to/Ben, biohack.to/Ben, you can get to some of the promotions. And one of them is the Biohacker's Handbook subscription. And we are coming out with the exercise chapter that lays out all the details about Krebs cycle and glycogen and muscle building and everything that goes down deep into the metabolic level, as well as exercise regimens, different exercise regimens for different targets that come out of research. So it's a handbook, basically. We only lay out the stuff that really works based on research. The book is over 1,500 references. It's a very dense book, so you may want to check it out. The subscription is basically like buying the physical book in advance. You get all the electronic chapters as they come out, and in the end of the day, you also get the book shipped to you only at shipping cost. So Ben, you have seen some of our work. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, it's some of the most thorough work I've ever seen when it comes to stuff that doesn't bore you, but that is instead like something new on every page. Like even me, like I'm pretty well read on a lot of this stuff, and I read like your guys is I think one of the first ones that came out was at Sleep.
Yeah, that's right. You have a foreword on that one.
Yeah, all sorts of information I hadn't yet seen before, pretty well steeped in research. So it is really good. Oh, and by the way, I should mention, related to that whole like muscle building or weight gain and size thing, definitely consider the use of like anabolics too. Like I'm a huge fan of, for example, colostrum supplementation, or like a lot of use of things like raw milk for enhancing muscle growth. I'm a big fan of some kind of essential amino acids, or like a really good protein source, or even like a vegan protein source like pea or rice or hemp. When you take digestive enzymes along with a protein like that, it becomes just as bioavailable as an egg whey protein or an egg protein or a whey protein. And then another one that really, really helps out is about 5 grams of creatine every day. But that's a nice little holy trilogy for weight gain is colostrum, amino acids, and creatine.
I want to throw in also a little tip about hemp protein is that if you sprout your hemp seeds and then you dry them up and you grind them, you get this hemp protein powder that doesn't spoil your smoothies at all. So somehow this sprouting really helps with the taste. Also, I have sprouted hemp seed oil, and it's a totally different story compared to just purely pressed hemp seed oil. So you vegans out there, or just about anyone, I mean, who wants to eat a healthy diet may want to check out on that one. And I want to throw in actually a vegan question here. So Kirsi Salo is asking, are vegan bodybuilders for real? So can you really put that much muscle, or that's a kind of evened out physique with a fully vegan diet? And Linda Heikkala is also asking, what would you recommend to vegans?
Certainly, there are for every one big vegan bodybuilder, there's 10 omnivorous bodybuilders. So I think sometimes it gets blown out of proportion, because every time there's a vegan bodybuilder, they get blown up on social media because, hey, they're vegan and they're a bodybuilder. But it's pretty rare, and the people who are doing it right are not only using some of the methods that Teemu just talked about, like soaking and sprouting some of the seeds that you do eat to increase the bioavailability of the amino acids and the fatty acids, and also to reduce a lot of the potential for digestive discomfort that can come with a relatively plant-rich diet. The reason for that is that plants do contain a high amount of lectins, and that protein can wreak some havoc, especially in high amounts. There's a really good, relatively new book about this called The Plant Paradox, just going into the paradox between the nutrient density and the antioxidant benefits of plants and the lectins and built-in defense mechanisms that plants have. So from a real foods standpoint, the first thing that you need to do is ensure that you're properly soaking and fermenting and sprouting the grains and the plants that you do eat. And in addition to that, if you really want to put on muscle or thrive on a plant-based diet, there are certain things that you're not going to get from a plant-based diet that you need to add in, or things that you'll get in very low amounts that you need to add in. A few of the biggies would be creatine, like I mentioned, and just using like a creatine monohydrate at around 5 grams a day. Taurine is another one that especially vegan athletes tend to be relatively deficient in. DHA is also important because you tend to get somewhat poor conversion of like EPA and ALA into DHA from things like flax seeds and chia seeds and all of these plant-based seeds and nuts. So using something that's like a plant-based source that's high in DHA, something like an algae, right, like a chlorella or a spirulina, in pretty high amounts in a vegan-based athlete or exerciser's diet. That's another important one to include. I would recommend, you usually can't do like amino acids because those are technically derived from like the hair of an animal. Vitamin D can be difficult. I mean, mushrooms are going to be a decent source of vitamin D. Of course, sunlight is. There's a very few number of companies that make like a plant-based or a vegan source of vitamin D, but that would be another good one to include. Those would be some of the biggies when it comes to kind of like maintaining performance and not getting any type of nutrient deficits on a vegan or a plant-based diet.
So if you would take like not just vegans, but just about anyone who now eats like a well-rounded diet, is there like one supplement or something that you would consider that people should put on top of their healthy diets? This is from Frank Lai.
Like one supplement?
Yeah, I mean, he's asking
Yeah.
about, some recommendation. I guess, like, I mean, Rhonda Patrick was talking about just like a general multivitamin and so on. Do you take a multivitamin?
Sometimes it depends. Like when I'm at home, I don't, because my diet is so varied and nutrient dense when I'm at home that I don't need to take a multivitamin. When I travel, I use the Thorne multivitamin. You take 3 in the morning and 3 in the evening, and it's got vitamin D, it's got vitamin K, methyl tetrahydrofolate. You know what? The main thing is, if you're going to use a multivitamin, and probably if I were just going to recommend one thing to answer your question, Tim, it would be a multivitamin, because at least you're covering your bases from like a shotgunning of nutrient standpoint. Just make sure you look for some red flags. For example, if your multivitamin has high amounts of vitamin D in it, or any amount of vitamin D in it, but not any vitamin K2 to ensure that the vitamin D isn't causing calcification, then whoever made that multivitamin probably didn't know what they were doing, and I'd proceed with caution. So you look for both vitamin D along with vitamin K2. If the vitamin B, for example, is in the form of folic acid and not something like methyl tetrahydrofolate, that's also kind of like a cautionary tale on the multivitamin that you should be careful with. I would look for artificial fillers. I would look for magnesium stearate. I would look for artificial sweeteners, artificial colors, if any of those appear on the label. I would also be I would be very cautious with that multivitamin. And then, when you're looking at for example, like minerals, I like to see those in a multivitamin. I like to see them in their chelated form. I typically like to see, of course, a full spectrum of fat-soluble vitamins, so vitamin A and vitamin E, in addition to the D and the K that I mentioned. I like to see vitamin C not be much more than about 1,000. Some people will put a whole bunch in there, which can cause gastric distress and also excessive elimination of reactive oxygen species. And you don't want that. You don't want to completely shut down reactive oxygen species, because then you actually miss out on a lot of the hormetic effects of oxidation. And so, multivitamin, but just make sure that you're not just grabbing like any old multivitamin because you heard that it was good or something like that. So that's what I would do as far as that goes. And by the way, I should mention, I might have time for perhaps 1, possibly 2 more questions. I've got about 5 minutes left here.
Gotcha. So I want to throw in a question about technology. So I've been playing around with this Oura ring myself now, and I've been comparing that to different sleep trackers like Emfit and Bedit, and I would recommend all of those for different purposes. So when it comes to your experience on using different wearables and tracking technologies, what kind of like impact do you see? Does it have an impact on people's fitness? That's a question from AG Moore. And Natasha Viscombe is asking, if there was like one device that you used to optimize your life, like what would that be, etc. So what's your experience on all these kind of trackers, etc.?
I do use the Oura, and the main thing I look for in a tracker, and the one variable that I probably quantify the most, is that heart rate variability that I mentioned earlier. And specifically, what I do is I measure or I look at my heart rate variability every morning, because that tells you it tells you the readiness of your nervous system. Now, if you use something like the Ring like that, and you just look at your readiness score for that day, that readiness score is based on your temperature, your heart rate variability, your previous day's activities. So if your readiness is low, you train hard, and if it's, if your readiness is high, you train hard that day. And if it's low, that's going to be the day where, like mine was low today, probably because I've been traveling and working my ass off over the weekend. So I chose to, instead of like going out and like doing the obstacle course or crushing the weights this morning, I did do like that, just like foam roller and a little bit of sauna, a little bit of cold pool. And so when you look at your HRV each morning, it allows you to make decisions on the fly about how you're going to train that day, or how you're going to treat that body today, like go hard or have an easier day. And I've found that when I pay attention to that variable, it keeps me from getting injured or ill with pretty surprising amounts of accuracy. I've been training that way for about 3 years now, where, even like I have a coach, and even if my coach has given me like a hard workout to do that day, I'll just save it for the next day or a couple of days later, and I'll kind of like mix and match my days and move things around so that when my heart rate variability is low, it's a recovery day. The only exception to that is if I'm getting ready to travel a whole bunch. Even if my heart rate variability is low, I'll kind of push through that and really beat my body up, because when I travel, I'm a lot more sedentary. I don't work out quite as hard in many cases. So my body has a chance to like get dug into kind of like a deep training hole, and then super compensate during those periods of time when I know I'm going to be less active. So you can, like, it's not like you can never train when your readiness is low or your heart rate variability is low. You just need to bear in mind that you need to plan for some kind of like super recovery or super compensation if you are going to like intentionally dig yourself into a hole, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. I know that you're pressed on time, so I want to move on to the Biohacker Summit, etc. Actually, there's a question from Greg Walters. What would be the best hacks that you have used that you have found that changed your life and you cannot go without? And I remember that you've been always giving out this information at the Biohacker Summit events, and there's video recordings available right now. So there's a link. It's on discount right now. It's on the promotion page, biohack.to/Ben. You can get your hands on that, and you've been kind of comparing ancestral living with the biohacking, let's say 2.0, all the new technologies and interventions and diets and all that stuff. So I really recommend you to check out those recordings. People travel to these events from all around the world, and we do a lot of work to make sure that everything that's on stage is of high value and of interesting content, just like these webinars. So check it out if you are into it. And the Biohacker Summit in October, what are you going to be talking about there, Ben? So and what's your opinion about Biohacker Summit in general? Why should people go there, and why do you come every year?
Yeah, I'll be relatively brief on this, but frankly, the Biohacker Summit, and I'm not just like blowing smoke up Temu's ass because he knows I've said this before. It is one of the best conferences I've ever been to. And the reason is that it's not just like a bunch of crazy people walk around with like wires sticking up out of their heads or some kind of a probe up their butt. It's instead people who have a really strong emphasis on like a really good marriage of ancestral living and modern science. So we do a lot of like wild plant foraging and cooking classes and like eating healthy, nutrient dense foods, not just like, some kind of a powder in a shaker cup. And there's like a lot of activities. There's like sauna, there's ice, there's exercise. And then there's also some of the most cutting edge technologies I've ever seen in my life when it comes to biohacking. So it's like a little bit of everything with amazing speakers. And it's just like, it's all put together in like a really slick way. It's not just like a bunch of people up there like pitching their products or something like that. Like it's really like, it's honestly like one of the highlights of my year to come out to the Biohacker Summit. And I personally am still deciding on exactly what I want to talk about. My talk is until October, and I guarantee, as I always do for the Biohacker Summit, I'm going to talk about something new. I do have some ideas, but I don't have the exact title yet. You're just going to have to wait and see. You'll probably know within a couple of weeks if you sign up to get notifications here on the webinar, or if you sign up for the summit. But I can guarantee you a good time. Probably one of the best times of your life if you head out to Finland for the summit. And again, I'm not just saying that. Like it really is one of my favorite places on the face of the planet to go. So.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you, Ben. I want to let you go, and I'm going to tell people a little bit more about some of the speakers that we have been able to close. So thank you so much for your time. And
thank you.
And the recording is going to be available of this talk as well. So have a nice rest of the day. I'm going to finish this off with a few things for the audience here. Thank you so much, Ben.
All right. Cheers. Thanks, everybody. See you in Finland in October.
Cool. All right. So let's see. Here we go. So I've been in contact with a very intelligent young man. His name is Daniel Bisonnet. He's 12 years old. And what I like about that guy, he's like Ben Greenfield plus David Avocado Wolf plus Dave Asprey put into one person, and he's like 12 years old. When he opens his mouth, you listen. He tells you all the details about the biochemistry that goes into whatever smoothie he's doing, or what kind of exercise regimen or cold thermogenesis he's going to engage himself with. And he's a lot of fun. He's a Canadian from Vancouver Island. And so you definitely want to come along to see the new generation, how 12-year-olds can beat up all the old guys already on the scene. And then there is also coming along, as you know, Biohacker Summit is a lot about better living through science, technology, and nature. So we bring always the nature aspect. It's not just supplementation and all those technical details and specific vitamin or whatever. We look at whole foods, we look at wild foods, we look at wild herbs, and foraging is going to be a big part. And that time of the year, 13th, 14th of October, it's going to be mushroom season. So we're definitely going to be foraging those things, and also the final things that you can get from nature in terms of plants. And one person who is coming along also from Canada is Yarrow Willard. You should check out on YouTube, Harmonic Arts YouTube channel. Yarrow Willard is the herbal Jedi. He's really a top expert when it comes to herbal medicine and what to do with it and how to process it. And he's a fun guy also. Other people coming along, there is discussions going on with a lot of different health experts, but Ben is definitely on the menu, as is Biohacker's Handbook and many others. So you definitely want to check it out. But if you can't wait, on 19th of May we have Biohacker Summit in Stockholm, and that's where we have people like Chris Dancy, who is the most quantified man in the world. He's actually so quantified that what he did, he actually is going to be talking about hacking time. So he's kind of beyond measuring with hundreds of different devices what's going on in his body. So now he's measuring time, and he's sending himself messages to the future, and he's literally hacking the time that we feel is linear in a very non-linear way. It's a very interesting talk that is coming along from him. There's experts on low carb, high fat diets, best-selling authors from Nordics. From Sweden, really top experts. There is brain hacking stuff like from Matthias Ribbing, who is kind of memory master. If you want to learn just about anything, memorize anything, he's one of the leading experts. He sold like over 50,000 books in Sweden, and he's a really great speaker also as well. I mean, that's going to be our first event in Sweden at Epicenter. It's a kind of a hub of startups in the very center, very heart of Stockholm, and we're going to be having awesome time. And on top of that, it is spring season, so it's going to be perfect time for foraging. We're still looking into organizing a foraging trip, but I have already signed up the leading foraging expert in Sweden, who is a best-selling author with Gourmand Awards, etc. 4 books, if I remember correctly, who is coming along as well. So check out Biohacker Summit if you're interested in any of these things. We really do put a lot of effort to bring this event together, and we would love to have you there physically. But if you can't afford travel, if you can't make it in person, there's always the video recordings from previous years. So check out the video recording bundles. There's a lot of great information over there. With that, I thank you so much for your time. And if you like what just happened in this webinar with Ben, etc., give us a thumbs up. Share this if you're on Facebook, etc., on YouTube, and otherwise, tell your friends about Biohacker Summit and Biohacker's podcast and Biohacker's Handbook and all those things. We really value your feedback. That's why we do all of this. So looking forward to seeing you in Stockholm or in Helsinki, and see you online. Use the hashtag BH Summit on Twitter, and for the 3 best tweets, I'm anyway going to send a surprise gift tomorrow. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a very healthy rest of the week. All right, awesome. Bye-bye.